There we go. Test one.
Okay, there we go. All right. Well, thanks for being patient with us, everyone. We're going to go our pre-commission agenda. I don't have anything to report. So, commissioners, do we have any housekeeping items or questions about the agenda? Commissioner McKinney.
Madam President, I have some questions or on the consent agenda, if the director has a moment.
Director, are you willing to come on up? Perfect. All right. Commissioner McKinney, go ahead.
Thank you. Director, I noticed this purchase of liquid asphalt material, and I know this is something we do every year. It just struck me that the amount here is 7.1 million, but the budget amount was 3.5 million. So I'm curious, what did we spend last year on liquid asphalt for our projects? Do we know? How does this compare? Is this a dramatic increase? Is it substantially the same?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I'll get clarification on the budget number. Usually we have the budget between Adams and Cloverdale, and it's split out in some form. So just want to make sure that we have it fully covered. This amount is very similar to what we've had in the past. It's like I think we said 0.07% different increase from prior years.
Okay, because the staff report said that, budget category something or other is 3.5 million.
Okay.
And that's what confused me.
We'll confirm, sir.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions on the agenda? All right, Director.
Wonderful. Commission, it's a pleasure to be here today and to share with you, and just wanted to wish you all a happy new fiscal year. It's always fun to start a new year and to kick off new projects and to get working on what you've directed us to for the budget for the FY 2025 budget year. I can hardly believe that that's what we're talking about from the days that I started. So it's exciting to be here and start this. We wanted to start out also recognizing Mr. John Wasson, who just yesterday received a Bronze Star for his service in Afghanistan from 2009 to 2010. He is a retired lieutenant colonel in the Army. During his deployment in Afghanistan, he oversaw Camp Alamo and was the deputy commander for Kabul Military Training Center, and commanded over 177 troops during that time. And truly an honor to have the amazing employees that we have working here, and truly grateful for his 41 years of service to the country and 23 and a half years here at ACHD. So just want to say congratulations to Mr. Wasson. As we continue to work to build together, build safe, and build more, wanted to share with you a few different things that came up this last week that are exciting, and the team continues to work hard to build the infrastructure for the public. This Saturday, if you don't know, it is homecoming week for Boise State. As an alumni there, I'm pretty excited about this. We've been working with Boise State, and this Saturday we will have the Ashton Genty plow on site in celebration of this major event. And so we're excited as we continue to work with them on what that will look like, but we're excited to have it there and representing ACHD as well as Boise State. The team was also involved this last week in a town hall meeting for City of Eagle. They were talking about the Downtown Eagle project. There were also a few questions that came up about Beacon Light Road and concerns about truck traffic there. Overall, the report is that the reception of ACHD's items was positive. They understand what's going on and the improvements that are being made. We hear it was an interesting meeting, but we'll leave opinions on those items to the city. I shared with you earlier this week the results of a survey that was completed by the city of Meridian. Included in they do this every couple of years to gauge how their programs are being received by the public. One of the things that they do ask questions about is transportation. And so one of the top concerns that the public did indicate is transportation, roads, traffic should be a top priority. Of those concerns, emphasis was on road widening and intersection improvements, which is not abnormal for what we've seen in Meridian. And just wanted to share with the commission the response to that as we dove deep into the integrated 5-year work plan. ACHD's programmed improvements in Meridian are 90% of them are for road and intersection projects. So I would say we're answering the call. That's 130 million over the next 5 years. I really do believe that the work that's being done there is really answering what the community needs. Really, as we look across the community, the needs were diverse. If the same survey was done in different communities, I think we may have different results. And truly, as we've dove into how we're spending funds in the different areas, really the expenses reflect the needs that we're seeing in each of the communities.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, Ryan, I dove into this survey as deep as I could. And I think we need to acknowledge that this was not a scientific poll. This was anything but. So what you just explained that we're doing should more than adequately cover the concerns that the citizens of Meridian expressed based on the way the questions were asked of them.
Also wanted to, as we continue to build safe, wanted to talk about the great work our IT team is doing. This last week, there were a number of agencies and other entities that were subject to about 6 or 7 different cyber attacks. I think it was 7 cyber attacks. A number of agencies were impacted by that. We saw all 7 come to ACHD. 6 of them were caught by our software, and the other 7 were caught by our staff. Or the last one was caught by our staff. And so this is, the team works really hard to do this. We get fake emails that to try and catch us and then educate us. But I just want to say that system is working very well, and kudos to our IT team for all that effort. There were 7 employees who caught the sneaked through, and we were able to catch it and quarantine it and get rid of it as quickly as possible. And so it didn't impact our system. Just love the work that everyone here at the Highway District to keep information safe, as well as to keep the agency protected. Last, I just wanted to, as we wrap up the first year of our walk, bike, ride outreach efforts, for those who are not familiar, the walk, bike, ride effort is a program of our Commuteride. It is a grant-funded program. It's a 3-year pilot that was launched this last summer. Our focus was on the Boise Bench community. Its main purpose was to encourage the community to explore other ways of getting around. And so thought the efforts were successful, and just wanted to share a few statistics from this. We had 619 people sign up, survey respondents who signed up for the program. 500 were received Get Going kits to start their efforts there and choosing different ways to get around. Things like bike bells, sunglasses, reflective bracelets, things that would help them be safe if they chose other methods. We had 5 park pop-up events in Cassia Park. We had 252 people attend. There were 302 additional community members who attended the Open Streets event that was held at the end of this. It was a wrap-up event that was led by Boise Bicycle Project and City of Boise. ACHD Commuteride was a participant and a supporter of that, and was a strong use that event in connection with these efforts. We want to thank, there were 8 small businesses that were invited, 2 local artists who were engaged. There were food trucks at each of the events, and we invited local artists to participate. One of them prepared this paint by numbers kit here that you see in the image. We also want to thank the community partners who participated in this and supported this effort. Valley Regional Transit, City of Boise, Boise Police Department, Boise Bicycle Project, Central Bench Neighborhood Association, and BSU Cycle Learning Center Bike Shop. So it's an exciting effort. We're now reviewing the impact and making some adjustments as we prepare for next year's events. In terms of things coming up, Commission, you can see we have a number of work sessions scheduled throughout the rest of this month. As well as next week, we have the exciting Employee Appreciation Breakfast. Let me know if you want to come help us cook. The exec team will all be cooking, and it'll be a fun time to just say thank you to our team. If there are any questions on any of these items, we do also have the Eagle State of the City that if anyone's interested in attending, we can get tickets for you for that, scheduled for October 15th. With that, Commission, I'll stand for any questions.
Thanks, Director. Any questions? All right, we'll be at ease until noon. Thank you. All right, it's now 12 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone that's joining us in person and online. Please join us and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next order of business is to adopt the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. We do not have any of those requests, so commissioners, is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we have one item on our regular agenda, and that is the authorization and order of condemnation for Fairview Avenue and Locust Grove Road, ACHD project number 320012, parcel 18, Stoneview Holdings LLC. Welcome, Mr. Dave Serdar.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, David Serdar, right-of-way supervisor for Ada County Highway District. This is a public hearing and condemnation briefing for a property on Fairview Avenue and Locust Grove project.
So
So-
we'll, sorry to interrupt you, Dave. So we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Thanks.
The owner of the property is Stoneview Village Holdings LLC. This project is part of ACHD's adopted 2025 to 2029 integrated 5-year work plan. This parcel is one of the final 4 parcels of a 2-year right-of-way acquisition process. We do expect, just for information for this commission, we do expect 2 more condemnations coming through in this project in the company. Once right-of-way is completed, this will be a shell for the district. We'll have all the property. The property is located on the south side of Fairview Avenue and just west of Locust Grove. You can see that, see the intersection there. As can be seen on this slide, there are 2 different temporary easements, and there's also a fee acquisition, which is in the kind of tannish yellow. The temporary easements are for the reconstruction of the entrances. The property size before the acquisition is 3.6 acres. The fee requirements and the temporary easements are both 0.087 acres. Property size after is 3.56 acres. The zoning at this location is general retail. The negotiation summary. ACH initially mailed the offer in 2023. The owner initially raised concerns about their sign and protecting their sign. ACHD staff worked hard to address those concerns and were able to offer protections for the sign. With still not reaching a resolution, ACHD sent a 10-day letter, and after receiving that letter, the owner provided a counteroffer. This counteroffer has been rejected by ACHD. It is staff recommendation that commission declare the acquisition area as necessary for the project as a right-of-way and public use, authorize staff to proceed with the condemnation action, and execute an order for the acquisition area. I will remain standing for any questions.
Thanks, Dave. I have a question. Can you go back to the map?
Yeah.
Or
that one-
Ariel,
that-
thank you. Sorry. Considering that we last year passed that access management, sorry, guys. Passed the access management ordinance, I'm just looking at the 2 access points within this acquisition, proposed acquisition. did you guys assess whether or not the access point there on the left of the screen was necessary? I mean, I know that we're very particular and we want to protect existing access, but if someone could talk through the rationale with maintaining these two access points, that'd be great.
Madam President, Commissioners, Diane Bevins, Deputy Director of Projects. I'd be happy to answer that question. Specifically on these parcels, both of the driveways are shared with the adjacent properties. So in a way, they are consolidated. The one on the east is shared with their property on the east, and the one on the west with a couple different businesses on that west side. And I'm 99% sure they're both right in, right out, being this close to the intersection as well.
Thanks, Diane. Any other questions for staff?
Madam President?
Commissioner McKinney?
Yes, Dave is, and maybe this would be a question for Diane, but you can probably answer this. Is there currently curb gutter and sidewalk in front of this parcel, or is that part of what the project, this new project is going to install? And that's the primary purpose of this right-of-way acquisition?
S- Madam President, Commissioner McKinney will have Seth answer.
Madam President, Commissioner Diane Bevins, Deputy Director of Projects again. Commissioner McKinney, there is existing curb and gutter at this particular location, but there is some widening of Fairview in this area for the additional lanes for the intersection.
Okay, so we're moving and reconstructing the existing curb gutter and sidewalk, basically.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. And then, let's see. I think that was really my only question. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thanks, Dave. Is the property owner present? I'd like to testify on this issue. Anyone online? Is there anyone that would like to testify on this issue? No? Okay, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing.
Madam
Commissioner,
President,
Commissioner McKinney.
I apologize. I did have one additional question I wanted to ask Dave. As far as our negotiations with the property owner, in your opinion, how far apart are we? Are we getting close to resolution, or is there still some significant work to be done to get to an agreement?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, we've had substantial negotiations with the property owner, probably at least 40 contacts. We were, I think on the sign, we were at an agreement. At the end, they kind of put a couple things in front of us, both in terms of cost and in improvements they wanted that were not acceptable to us. And we're quite a ways apart, but you know, tends to be when these things get to the attorneys and they start negotiating, a lot of times those concerns kind of, you know, go away. Not go away, but they get resolved as a part of the process. You're welcome.
Is there a motion?
Sure.
Can you turn on your mic?
Make a motion to approve the authorization order of condemnation for the Fairview Avenue and Locust Grove project number 320012, parcel 18 with Stoneview Holdings LLC.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Madam-
Commissioner Henson?
Yeah, Madam President, I'll be voting no. I don't see there's a public necessity for 9 lanes at this location. I know it was included in the massive budget and the 5-year plan that was approved in 2023. So, but there isn't a public necessity for this kind of design. And so, and since a condemnation to take private property requires a finding of public necessity, I don't find that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Diane. All right, moving on to discussion items. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission at this time? All right, well then the meeting is adjourned. We're gonna roll into our post-commission agenda. with two specific work sessions. The first being the license agreement with the city of Boise for the installation of cameras. Welcome, Ms. Bree Brush.
Oh, it's a little further away today. Okay. Bree Brush, Mayor's Transportation Advisor at the City of Boise. I gave the same presentation yesterday, so forgive me if it's a little bit council specific, but I'm here before you today to discuss the proposed pilot for red light enforcement cameras. I did have our corporal of our traffic unit planning to join me, but he got called away. So you're here with me, but I think I can speak to some of the things he shared with council last night from a law enforcement perspective. We started looking at this almost exactly a year ago when we were researching potential traffic safety strategies that the city could implement. We were able to implement one of those right away, the Traffic Fatality Review Task Force, on which Commissioner Pickering and Director Head sits, and some like red light cameras we continue to research and explore. So I'll start by talking a little bit about how these devices work and then go into what a pilot could look like. Red light enforcement cameras are not new. Cities across the country have used these since the 90s and still use them today. There are a few different types of devices available. Here on the screen is an example of one that utilizes backplate photos and sensors to determine when is over the stop bar, take a photo, and after some level of review, either from an officer or from the technology, issue a citation. Camera technology exists in Idaho today. Several communities have started to implement LPRs, which you're familiar with, to aid in locating vehicles associated with crimes or investigation efforts. And then Nampa has newly implemented traffic monitoring cameras, which help them deploy officers to crashes faster and assist in investigations. One reason why cameras can be really helpful in investigations, crash investigations in particular, is it kind of provides a story that witnesses cannot always reliably provide. There's always a level of human error, in particular when people are remembering events that might be traumatic. So it's hard to ask 5 people what color the light was. They'll give you 5 different colors probably. So cameras can be a really helpful tool in that sense for officers as they work on investigations. These are not yet utilized for enforcement. That is to actually issue a citation based off of what is shown on a camera. The chart on the right here is not specific to Boise. It's national data that AAA collects on how dangerous red light running is as a habit. But I think you can imagine how deadly this behavior can become, particularly because it's associated with generally higher speeds if someone is trying to clear a light. It is difficult to track from a BPD perspective because multiple different citation codes can be used. So typically we'll see these citations issued with something else, usually with a crash. But our data so far for 24 is showing the hotspots, some that we would be expecting downtown, Fairview, Vista, and Overland, where people are less patient and they're generally just trying to get through that light. It's also a really labor-intensive traffic stop. An officer has to physically see the vehicle clear the crossbar, then pull out from wherever they are in traffic to go chase that vehicle down. So it is really difficult, and there are some intersections that are just hard to navigate as an officer trying to make this citation. We think this could be a really valuable enforcement tool and help our officers strategically deploy their resources and reinforce those safe behaviors we want to see on the roads. There's a lot more that we need to do, but this very first step is a license agreement with you all to allow us to deploy this type of technology in the right of way. The agreement that we have drafted and worked on with you includes a level of cooperation that we will tell you where we want to put them before they're just showing up, and kind of the typical parameters you followed for the LPR devices in other communities really closely mimics that agreement. And then once we get through that, we would like to define the parameters of the pilot, how long it will run, the time frame that we'll be looking at, number of cameras, intersections, and then moving forward to vendor identification. I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, a few.
Mhm.
I may not ask all that I was just thinking about, so I may have to butt in again, but I've understood for years now that that being able to issue tickets from a camera is illegal in Idaho. is that not the case any longer?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, we don't have prohibitive legislation, nor do we have enabling legislation. So the code section that allows officers to write a ticket for red light running, 49802, shows that there must be a peace officer review on a citation. So there's a couple different approaches we could take. We can issue a warning that is no citation associated, or with officer review, we can still issue a ticket. Officer has to review the photo and see, yes, this vehicle was over the stop bar.
Will you guys have to have an enabling ordinance, or is that already there? The next one is, you had mentioned some other uses for these cameras besides the red light running, which would be an aid in investigating. Now, one of the things we've discussed as commissions over the last years is not wanting to become in the business of anything that would allow lawyers to start to tie up our traffic control center for purposes of gathering evidence for investigations. Is this going to cause us any additional work whatsoever?
Madam President, Commissioner, I think for us, in the terms of this red light running pilot, the only time this would be utilized in an investigation is if it's associated with a crash with red light running. And all that would not require anything
So
from
that
you.
means, yes, it would involve us being on the hook for a lot of additional evidence and time of our staff to produce the evidence and give it to parties who are interested in it.
We would own the technology and own the asset. So it seems unlikely. And already today in crash investigation, you supply the signal timing data. So it's not probably
So
much
that's
more
all
than you already do.
computer-based.
Yeah.
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, the draft agreement as it has been written that will be before you next week is listed in such a way that ACHD would be indemnified and would not be subject to any public record request. All data would be stored on city devices, storage. We would not have any of the data even available to us. So it would be strictly their cameras. They're not using our cameras to do this. This would
Okay.
be new cameras that would be installed on the equipment. All we are being asked is to allow them to be in the right of way and to use our equipment to install them on.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McKinney?
Madam President, yes, I kind of a variety of thoughts, but I'm wondering if our general counsel has any thoughts from a legal standpoint that, because this sort of system brings up a variety of concerns. One of them, of course, is that we ran into this a while ago with, I think, the Ada County Sheriff's Department locating some cameras. And I don't know if they're the same ones that the city of Boise has now. But the concern, of course, is that number one, any technology that can be abused for nefarious purposes tends to eventually get there, or at least that's a tendency. I'm not saying that's going to happen here. So, for example, if you take these intersection cameras, combine them with facial recognition software, next thing you know, you've got not just tracking of vehicles, but tracking of people, and there's all kinds of possibilities that I know people are concerned about. Tracking of individuals to the extent that they do, I believe, in China these days is a concern that many Americans have. Are we headed in that direction? So, Mr. General Counsel, do you have some thoughts on the legal implications of a wider red light camera pilot project?
Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, Steve Price, General Counsel. We've looked at it, and Brooke has, in her testimonies, outlined that there's no affirmative law that allows it or disallows it. This is a pilot project. This is not ACHD using its cameras or poles to do this. This is simply a license agreement that allows the city of Boise, and I think we've done it with the city of Meridian, to be honest with you, recently, to test that. I'm sure if there is any desire to impact the agreement, then I'm sure those steps will be taken. But from a legal standpoint, probably the first time in ACHD's history, we agree with the city of Boise attorneys on something. So, yes, you can print it. So the license agreement has all kinds of conditions that allow that in the event that if anything comes up, that we can remove the cameras and go back to status quo. So we're protected in the event that if any challenge comes to that, and there's any decision that's resulting from that that would require the removal of those, then the city of Boise, under our agreement, would be required to remove those. Again, this is simply a pilot project. This is not a system-wide. I think this is really the city just trying to see how their enforcement could be impacted with the use of the cameras. And that's really it.
So does our agreement then include, stipulations regarding nature of use of the data, as conditions for going forward?
The only condition is that they have to use it within the confines of any local, state, or federal law. They have to operate that agreement within those guidelines.
Commissioner McKinney, on our procurement side, when we start looking at vendors, we will put some firm boundaries around how they can use data, how we will use data. This is very, very initial before it goes into the Boise City procurement process, which will ask all of these questions. And I can speak to some other contracts I've worked on where they do a really nice job making sure we're not going to be in any legally risky position as well. Maybe to speak to your earlier comments on privacy concerns, we share those. There's different types of technology that can be utilized that don't do the front plate photos with the facial recognition. They might not be as effective because or they might be more effective than just backplate because somebody on a backplate reader can just say, it wasn't me driving, somebody else. So we kind of run that risk, but those are things we're going to be able to look at when we look at vendors. And the benefit we have of doing this 30 years after others have done it is we kind of can see who the good and bad actors are in this space. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I'm still mulling it over, but I appreciate the information.
Well, and just one other out is that we can basically terminate the contract at any time with, I think, 60 days notice. So this is, and our attention to the conditions is really, as long as they use our equipment and it doesn't impact the engineering or safety of any aspect of our traffic operations infrastructure, then we're typically fine with that. And this is a partnering agency, and this is really showing good faith to them about a program that they want to get going.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yeah, I have all of the same concerns that probably anybody would. I will say that for the last few years, either at the very top or very close to the top of my concerns, as far as the public safety goes, is this issue of running red lights. And on the record, we've had conversations with mayors where they just say, I'm sorry, our staff is stretched too thin. And at one time during COVID, Boise was down 36 or 39 officers. So that was very understandable. As far as I'm concerned, as long as there's enough protections for the agency here and the public from the things I mentioned earlier, attorneys looking for evidence for their clients or against others, things like that, I'm willing to give this a shot.
Bree, thank you so much for working, you and the rest of the staff working with our staff to come up with an agreement. I think I'm not alone in this, where I think every time I get in a car every day, I see someone running a red light literally every day. And I think all of us can agree with us about that. And so it's definitely turned into this learned behavior that despite all of our shared efforts, it's just not making a dent in that behavior, and we're seeing the consequences of it. And with folks dying, being hit, and not having any proof, to your point, that we can actually say that they actually ran that red light, right, concretely. So I think, aside from the concerns that my fellow commissioners have brought on about like security, things like that, it's clear like this, you guys are gonna own that data. You're responsible for that data. You're really just trying to have access to our mast arms and things like that to then apply the cameras. So really looking forward to seeing the agreement and just some of the parameters that you're looking at. And I think, you know, just really clearly for those that might be listening online, like ACG does not have any enforcement authority too as well. I just want to make that really clear. And there's no way, I think, and just correct me if I'm wrong, Bree, that if you were to have the level of enforcement authority to have a patrol car at every intersection, what, 400 something intersections that we have just within the ACHD right of way? I mean,
We
we
don't have that.
we wouldn't be able to afford the taxes to do that, right? So I think, again, this is a fiscal, it's fiscally responsible, right? Especially if there's a police, and I really appreciate your point about having a police officer review it, because we've all heard of cameras and AI, right, misappropriating a particular ticket or something, right? So having that human safeguard is important.
Madam President, we just want to see if this is a tool worth implementing more broadly. And I think this
Absolutely.
will help us get the data to do that. And we have attorneys just like you all that help keep us safe and make sure we're doing the right thing when we set up these contracts and agreements.
Great. Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, I have a question. So in evaluating the red light running, is it drivers who turn right? I mean, that seems to me at quite a number of examples where the light's red, they know they can stop and turn right on red. And that's when we then see them basically running the red light. They don't fully stop and then they hit someone in the crosswalk. Or that's, you know, an illegal because they didn't stop. Or is it running through the red light, a stale yellow, and it turns red? What's the data tell us based upon observations?
Commissioner Hanson, that's one of the main reasons why it's so hard to get the data, is because on a situation like that, that person could be cited as failure to yield to the pedestrian or failure to yield to the signal. So it could come up as either one of those, or one could rank higher as a contributing cause than another. But when I looked back at the last quarter, it was mostly left turns.
Yep, we've had several fatalities as a result of those.
Well, and we also have had several that are just straight through red lights. So, you know, Jaden, 16th in Washington, we've had 2 folks that nearly died on Main earlier this year that got maimed downtown going through a red light. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate the question too.
At least one fatality a year can be attributed to red light running for the last decade.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Bree? Commissioner Gold?
I don't have any other questions, but just want to echo the comments that the red light running is obviously a problem in the community and a concern that folks in the public share often, and that we don't have enforcement authority, and, you know, appreciate the city's efforts to utilize resources more effectively, and look forward to looking at the agreement.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bree. All right, our second work session is the 2023 ADA Annual Report, presentation by staff. Welcome, Sean.
Madam President, Commissioners, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you this afternoon. For the record, Sean Kelly, Accessibility and Mobility Specialist here at the Highway District. We're going to talk about the ADA Annual Report for the 2023 year, which I know is also, we did this earlier this year and it was a little confusing. We're late in the game with bringing this report. Usually we want to get this report earlier out so that in 2025, we're actually talking about 2024 early on. So I want to give some thanks to some of our staff members that helped us put this together. It's a team effort here. I really want to talk about the GIS team. We have some great professionals there that helped me understand GIS a little bit better, helped us map through this process, and just helped us understand our data quite a bit better. A little snippet of our new cover sheet. We have a commitment in our ADA transition plan to utilize individuals and media with disabilities. With some facilities that we have here, just thought that was apropos for this report. The goals of the report are to enhance readability. We've gone from about 70 pages from our previous reports to 17. We've removed quite a bit of spreadsheeting and things like that we didn't think were very readable and added as much value to the reader. We wanted to refine our collection process through this and make sure that what we're pulling into GIS is something that we can actually pull back out. And then highlight our successes, because this is actually a report that we can talk about what we've done well and where we can do better. And then summarize our impacts, which is what the report has always intended to do. For refinement, we've aligned the report with our ACHD quarterly pedestrian construction updates. These are updates that I get from different departments, from maintenance to safe sidewalks to capital projects, about things that we've actually constructed within our right-of-way. And then we've manually input those. I myself or GIS has helped us manually input those into GIS. We also want to describe private development impacts in our network additions and show how the valley is growing. And then call out specific ADA transition plan targets that we have reached. Methodology, the only changes here really, we've always used GIS as our mainstay, but quarterly pedestrian construction updates being used as the primary source of that data, and then some analysis in there. For transition plan compliance, we have a formal grievance policy. It's important that we actually say that we have one and put it in the report. In 2023, we did have one formal grievance that came through that reporting policy or recording process. We wanted to highlight our critical ADA roles, from our accessibility inspectors that we have out there looking at things in the right of way, to our ADA coordinator, to my new role as the accessibility specialist here at ACHD, and then departmental compliance. This one is actually important to me because I wanted to talk to the ADAC, as the ADA Advisory Committee asked specifically for us to talk about things that were not just in the right of way, but things that we have as a responsibility as an organization to make ADA compliant. And communications happens to have a significant portion of that with their front-facing, public-facing process and what they do. So everything from finding accessible locations to PIMS, to the media that they put out, it's being ADA compliant, to reasonable accommodations. And that falls generally within their wheelhouse. So we have a section in there that talks about what they were doing in 2023 to make that good. And then the ADA Advisory Committee itself, a yearly roll-up of what we talked about in the committee, what the committee brought to us, concerns that they had, and things that they were briefed on for the year. As we get into the right-of-way, sidewalks, we'll talk about sidewalks first. On the left-hand side, you'll see that is what ACHD built within our capital projects, maintenance, and safe sidewalks. About 11 miles of sidewalks was constructed within our right-of-way. And then on the right-hand side, I talked about the impacts of subdivision growth and private development. That is what was mapped in GIS through the course of 2023. And that's about 55 miles is what we actually put in through 2023. So a total of 66 miles added to our network.
Sean?
Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. Can you go back one? So when you say completed by private, can you explain what that means?
Just private development, President Pickering. It's so anybody who does a subdivision and goes through, I think it's development services. So that's what private development would be.
So you're counting that as like, are they repairing old sidewalk or
Brand
putting
new.
in brand new? Okay.
Brand new.
Question, on their own land,
President Pickering,
adjacent to their own land, is that correct?
Commissioner Hanson, yes, that's true. For curb ramps, this is specifically ACHD projects. So if you look at the numbers there, we have our priorities that we have to fix within our transition plan for high priority, medium priority, low priority, and no deficiencies identified. That curb ramp count is about 416 that ACHD built within the county. And then private development, we've mapped another 492 within the county, and that comes to about 908 for that year.
Sean, when you talk about the number that ACHD completed outside of new development, how do we go about doing that? our staff go in and fix them, or is only certain ones that we fix and then we contract it out for larger or more like clustered projects?
I
Can you
think it's both
explain that?
because we've got capital projects who are building those projects out and
Okay.
those are counted in there. We've got Safe
Okay.
Sidewalks who's responding and putting in curb ramps where they have had a citizen complaint or a TELUS or have had on their plan to do. Now we're going to have safety engineering doing some of those as well. And, you know, as we go forward into 2024, 2025. And then we also have maintenance projects that just need to be done.
And then how do you define high, medium, and low priority?
So high, medium, and low is based off of the transition plan itself. The 88 transition plan, when we had that done, has a metric or a matrix in the back. And in that back, it's got for sidewalks and for curb ramps. And it is literally categories of how bad something is. And then it's next to a distance to a civic facility, commercial facility. And between that, on that matrix is where we develop what is high, medium, and low. Something that is low could very well be just as bad as something that's high, but it's further away, it's lower on a priority to fix. So that's where we get those from.
Thank you. And actually, sorry, one more question, Sean. Can you go back? Thank you. And it's hard to see with this map, like which ones were high priority versus medium and low. So could you give us a summary of where you tended to see the high priority improvements and where those were done versus the low priority ones?
Madam President, that would be very difficult for me to do
Okay.
at this point, standing up here right now. It's something that we could probably query in GIS and recolor those. But since they've all been fixed, they're all going to show up as no deficiencies noted.
Gotcha.
So it wouldn't show up as, they'd all show up as the same color.
Well, I think moving forward and having, you know, a work session on, because I know you guys, I mean, we have such great data now about where the deficiencies exist. Having kind of a sense of where we're seeing the higher priority ones pop up versus the low ones at a future date would be helpful, looking more proactively in the future.
Madam President, absolutely. I do look at that. That is things that we can show in our database as it is right now. We're making it better, working together with GIS and actually making sure that we can use these things. We'd like to use it as a tool to carry forward to, if the capital projects can take a look at it, safety engineering can take a look at it for that specific reason.
Fabulous. Thank you.
For APS, we've got 100 that had built in the county, one repaired. The one repaired, I'll just say, was Park Center and Law. That was the one that we had that we counted. It was hit by a truck.
That would make sense.
And then for the summary, what we want to see every single year is a growth here to be no deficiencies noted. So the growth here is about 1% to 1.5% every year. We're growing to show that our network is getting better. We don't have the high, medium, and low percentage as we had the previous year. So in this case, we've got about a 1 to 1% increase for curb ramps and sidewalks that are now no deficiencies noted.
Question. So that, just to be clear, that this is taking into account all the new, you know, miles created, all of that stuff, right? So we're looking at the entire growth year over year and then dividing that by the number.
Madam President, that is correct. That is the full math problem of 36,000 curb ramps and 3,000 miles of sidewalk, and that what is growing every year is getting included into that math problem as well.
But obviously this is again looking at 2023, but not, you know, being, you know, looking at the future and looking at our integrated 5-year work plan to make sure that this math problem is staying consistent with the integrated 5-year plan, correct? Right, because that's not the nature of this report.
Correct.
Okay.
Madam President, next steps for this report is to get it published now that we have it finished and get it out there. And then, as I said earlier in the briefing, in 2024, we'd like to start earlier, about probably February, because I will have all of those construction updates. I'll be able to compile them earlier, and I can bring this report for 2024 to commission much earlier in the year, where it's in your rearview mirror really closely, as opposed to October, And that's what we'd like to have this done. So with all the restructuring we've done, the refinement that we're doing, and hopefully make it a continually growing this report to be more readable, more valuable, have more information. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam President. And Sean, one of the pieces, I read the report that was attached that you didn't bring up, I thought was a critical piece of information in your analysis, is the census blocks were based on the percentages of, we know, of people with disabilities. And it seems to me that should be a critical driving force. And what that indicates is that there are lots of areas that now they may not be very close to sort of some commercial development or a school or whatever, but nonetheless, there's a high percentage of people with disabilities, and they may not have sidewalks, or they may not have functional ramps. But that should be a factor as well, and that should also weigh, if we're going to make this much investment to analyze where the priority neighborhoods are, that then when development happens, that they aren't made worse. And that neighbors who don't have sidewalks, but the streets function because it's, you know, a dead end street, it doesn't have sidewalks, there's not a lot of traffic. If the conditions change, then suddenly that neighborhood is now much more at risk. Those residents are much more at risk. And we already know they're over 10%, maybe over 20%. I think it's critical that this commission develop some sort of process to use the data that we're investing in, a lot of money in investing in, to make sure that that weighs in favor of the people who live there, so that their living conditions, the livability of their neighborhood is not made worse by other things that happen around. And that's a critical piece of this analysis. And I would like in the next presentation to say, come up with some recommendations on how to use that data more effectively to prioritize. Because as far as I can tell, based on the locations of the high percent neighborhoods with high percentage of people with disabilities, they aren't being prioritized. With one exception, and that was with the RAISE grant, where we actually got some money to invest to improve, but they aren't being prioritized on other areas. And so we have to figure out, how do we do that? Because they're still taxpayers. They may have a disability, they may not drive, but they're still taxpayers, they're still residents, and we need to prioritize those neighborhoods.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, that is something that I would like to be able to do, is to get this data, that's ACS data, and get it to our GIS team, figure out a way to input it into our GIS so that we can look at that, overlay our maps, our sidewalks, our curb ramps, and look at where those areas line up, to include your commission districts, and just to be able to look at it through those lenses so we can see that. It's part of my wish list of, can I get this done through ACS? ACS data is free data. It's out there for people to pull. So I'm gonna work with GIS, see if we can't get this integrated into our system.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. And Sean, and I hope that data would then be injected into every part of this agency as it evaluates whether it does or doesn't approve of certain other developments around the county.
Any other questions for Sean? Thank you for coming. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, we'll be back next week. Thanks, everyone.